Sufficiency of the Truth. The Bible has rightly been called the manufacturer's handbook. God, our Maker, see Psalm 95:6, Proverbs 22:2, and Isaiah 17:7, intended the creatures He made to continually consult that handbook in faith. Surely our Maker included in His operating manual every instruction needed for His creatures to function holily. Leviticus 11:44 and 45, 19:2, 1 Thessalonians 2:10. Happily, in Psalm 146:5, Proverbs 3:13 and 18, 16:20, and John 13:17, and fruitfully, Genesis 1:28, John 15:4 and 8, Colossians 1:10. Surely God has not overlooked any possible problems or malfunction which might befall us, nor failed to provide complete instructions and all appropriate remedies. Suppose the descendants of Adam became angry, frustrated, fearful, anxious, insecure, lonely, or suppose they feel misused and abused, or useless and lacking in purpose or meaning. Let them turn for counsel and help to their Maker, who knows everything about them, and to the manufacturer's handbook, in which He has provided complete operating instructions. As David said, "What time I am afraid, I will trust in Thee." Psalm 56:3. Let them turn to Christ, who indwells and empowers and whose very name is Counselor. Isaiah 9:6. What further counsel or help could they need? Indeed, until very recently, the people of God looked to Him alone for their spiritual and emotional needs, and triumphed by faith. Consider the suffering Job endured without any counseling or therapy from a Christian psychologist. If he didn't need it, then surely those who suffer far less don't need this newly invented help today. Job's trials and the remedy he found through trust in God and submission to His will teach us that trials must be endured for our own good, to refine and mature us, and that God Himself will be with us and is all we need to carry us through. Or consider Joseph. Misunderstood and criticized by his parents and hated by his brethren, who wanted to kill him, he was sold into Egypt. There he was falsely accused and wrongly imprisoned and left to languish as a criminal. How could he have survived with no psychological counseling, 12-step programs, or inner healing to provide the help that so many now consider to be essential? In fact, he triumphed gloriously. Logically, then, if today's new remedies weren't needed by Joseph, they aren't needed now. Compare anyone's suffering today with what Paul endured. In labors more abundant, in stripes, that is, scourgings, above measure, in prisons more frequent, in deaths oft. Of the Jews 5 times received I 39 stripes. 40 lashes were often fatal. Thrice was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep, in journeyings often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils by mine own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness, and that which cometh upon me daily, the care of all the churches. 2 Corinthians 11:23-28. Of course it was Paul's sense of self-worth, his positive self-image, and his high self-esteem that carried him through, right? Wrong. This pitiful humanistic theory, so popular in the church, has proved to be so false and harmful that even much of the secular world is abandoning it. Newsweek's cover of February 17, 1992, announced its feature article in large letters, quote, "The Curse of Self-Esteem, What's Wrong with the Feel-Good Movement?" unquote. A November 23, 1995 article by a professor-researcher in Portland, Oregon's The Oregonian newspaper was titled, "Note to California, Drop Self-Esteem, Self-Control is Most Important." California, with its self-esteem task force, like leading Christian psychologists, has spent years trying to prove that self-esteem is vital and has failed. Based upon years of research, the author declares, quote, "If we could cross out self-esteem and put in self-control, kids would be better off and society in general would be much better off," unquote. This is precisely what the Bible has always said. Yet this fallacious and harmful theory is the very bread and butter of Christian psychology. Paul called himself the chief of sinners, 1 Timothy 1:15, considered himself less than the least of all saints, Ephesians 3:8, unworthy to be an apostle, 1 Corinthians 15:9, and rejoiced in his weakness. Yet he claimed to be able to do all things through Christ, Philippians 4:13, and to be always victorious, 1 Corinthians 15:57, 2 Corinthians 2:14, Philippians 1:20. Christ told Paul, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness." Paul's response? "Most gladly, therefore, that the power of Christ may rest upon me, I take pleasure in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then am I strong." 2 Corinthians 12:9 and 10.